As a Black woman in communications and public leadership, I'd imagine there are rooms where you were not only the one of the more qualified people, but also the most scrutinized, right? That was my next question. And what has that been like? And what, maybe for people out there, what is that like? Because I think as growing up as a white male, like I have no idea.
It it's hard. You feel like you have to prove yourself twice as much as everyone else. So I've had the uncomfortable question of where were you educated?
Oh, wow.
And it took everything in me to not punch the person right in
Right,
their
right. Yeah.
face,
Yeah.
but answer with like grace and poise and walk them through my career. And yes, I have a master's degree and, I have a lot of work experience and I raised a family and I have 5 children and, walk them through that. But I have been very intimidated in these rooms in the past. And I I try to just pump myself up or talk to my mentor ahead of time and just be like, I'm going into this male, pale, and stale room again.
I've never heard that and I love it. That's great.
Yeah, that was case. Everything was male, pale, and stale. And I know they're all going to be looking at me
Yeah.
and they're all going to want to see how she reacts to this.
My wife and I, probably like all of you, have seen some bad bosses in our careers, but today's guest is one that bucks that trend. My wife worked for today's guest, and if you know my wife, I take her opinion very heavily. Sarah Johnson is one of her favorite people, and she has worked with or for one of her favorite colleagues, period. And that kind of endorsement means a lot. And when I started looking into Sarah's story, I understood why. She's built a career at the intersection of communication, community, and leadership, and in ways that most people only talk about. From the halls of Case Western Reserve, where she worked with my wife and served as her boss, to City Hall in Cleveland, where she now serves as the Chief Communications Officer alongside the Mayor, Justin Bibb. She spent her career finding the right words at the right moment for the right people. And as a Black woman navigating some of the most visible and high stakes rooms in public life, she's done so with grace that you don't just stumble into. You have to build this. So, Sarah Johnson, thank you for taking the call.
This is really exciting for me, and I really appreciate that intro. I love your wife. She is one of my favorite colleagues who had a huge impact on me.
She's a gem and she sends her love. She can't be here to say hello. Unfortunately, she's at a conference doing what she loves and learning more about writing and doing some of those things. And you know all about that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, she had such a great experience with you at Case Western, and you went from Case Western, and now you're serving as the Chief Communications Officer. There were some stops in between, but now you're serving as the Chief Comms Officer for the city of Cleveland and alongside the mayor. When somebody asks you at a dinner party, what do you do for a living? Because it's such a common question.
Sure.
What do you say to folks?
So I tell people anything that has words that comes out of the city or the mayor, I have oversight over. So that includes all social media, all media relations, any internal communications, anyone speaking on behalf of the city, I have oversight over. And it's a large group to manage. There's 8,000 employees with 8,000 perspectives.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And I would also say I oversee the crisis communications. So if there is a high stakes incident, if there is a shooting or a cyber attack or something like that, I lead the communication strategy for those situations as well.
That's a heavy responsibility when you're talking about 8,000 employees. And you're right, 8,000 perspectives. What led you to wanting to take this role?
Well, it's funny because at first I was not interested.
Sure.
One of our former colleagues, Sarah and I's former colleague, Nicole Rothstein,
Hmm?
her husband actually reached out to me because he was helping with the Bibb campaign. And he said, hey, Mayor-elect Bibb is looking for a chief communications officer. And I said, I heard, that's great. And he said, well, why don't you throw your hat in the ring? And I said, I don't do government. I'm content where I'm at. And he pushed me out of my comfort zone to meet with people from the campaign. And then I met with the mayor, and his vision for the city was so compelling that I said, I have to be a part of this change. I want to help this man achieve his vision because he is leading Cleveland in the right direction. And I just want to be a part of it. And I'm so glad that I joined.
I think that is fascinating. And I think a lot of times in those kinds of roles, the best fits for folks are the ones that I wouldn't say get dragged kicking and screaming, but I would say where they weren't like, oh, that's me. And
Right.
you found yourself in that role. Has it played out so far the way you've thought as far as, being in that role?
It has. It has been the most fulfilling and challenging job I've ever had in my career. It's chaotic. I never know what I'm walking into day to day, but I keep coming back because I love it. And I love the impact I can have on residents. I love being able to make the city safer, to make the city a better place for everyone to do business, to be involved in attracting new businesses to Cleveland. So it's been great. And, we're in term 2 now. This is leading into my 4th year. So
Wow.
it's been great.
Politics is a whole different animal.
Sure is.
When you're 18, is this what you thought Sarah Johnson would be doing? You thought, oh yeah, I'll end up working in politics, or I'll end up at Case, or working for, I think it was the Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Mhm.
Is this the career trajectory you thought you would be on?
Absolutely not. So, and that makes it fun and exciting. When I was 18 years old, my first job was working at a residential facility for children with disabilities. So I worked for that particular organization for 11 years. I went and got my undergrad in speech pathology. I wanted to be a speech therapist for kids with disabilities. That's where I thought I was going. And when I was in grad school working on my MBA in healthcare administration, I worked with the Cleveland Clinic, and I had to work on a marketing project. And I was like, I kind of like marketing. This is kind of cool.
Huh.
And at the end of my internship, I needed a job, and they offered me a job in marketing. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do this for now, but I will go back and I will work with these children. And that's kind of how my career took me. I went into healthcare marketing, and then you talk about the power of connections. Someone I worked with at the clinic went over to Case and said, hey, I need someone to do marketing strategy here. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try, and went over there, and here we are.
That's fascinating. I think sometimes people feel like they have to stay in the path that they started on. Do you ever think back about those decisions and say, I wonder if I had stayed in that lane, what would have happened? Not in a regretful way, but in a way of like, we all say yeses and nos to certain things
Sure.
that change the direction of our life. Do you ever think about that?
I do. I wonder if I had ended up going back to the residential facility I was working at,
Yeah.
maybe running it, what that would look like. But I don't have any regrets with the choices I've made. I've never made a decision and said, I really wish I had not chosen that, because I've met so many amazing people and learned so many lessons along the way. Even when we have bad bosses, I've had some pretty bad bosses, but you learn so much from the bad bosses, because you say to yourself, I'm never going to be like you. I'm going to take all this in, and I am never going to treat people the way you treat me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I tell people that as somebody who coached, you learn more from losses than wins. And it's sort of
Sure.
the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like you do sort of take those poor leaders, we'll call them, and say, okay, whether they're miscast, right? Maybe they just were miscast and put in a role they shouldn't have been in, or maybe they're just not good at leading.
Yeah.
What's one of the best leaders you've ever worked for?
Oh, wow. Honestly, I think the best leader I've ever worked for is the mayor.
Okay, tell me why. Because that sounds like political speak, right? And that's what people would say.
It
But
does.
I believe
Yeah.
you. I've never had a chance to meet Mayor Bibb, but he's definitely inspirational from the outside. You see him and you go, I can see how people could follow this guy.
Yeah. First of all, he's intelligent. He is so smart. His memory is like something I've never seen before. He can he'll remind me of something I said 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I said that? I don't remember that. He's so smart. He's so passionate about the work and making things better. And someone whose heart is in the right place, for me, is easy to follow. If it gets to a point where I would have to question my morals or my ethics or my judgment, that's when I'm like, this isn't for me. But I've never had to do that here. And that's
That's a
been,
lot.
yeah.
I
And
don't know.
for a politician, you
Right.
know what I mean? Like,
I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's the norm. I've met plenty of politicians, some good, some not so good, and
sure.
some ethical, some not so ethical. But when you were at Case to the city of Cleveland and everywhere in between, when you look around, you mentioned relationships and the importance of those. What do you think mattered more? Relationships, opportunities, preparation? Like how has that all sort of come together for like the perfect storm in your career?
I think the power of connections has really helped me. So each job opportunity that I explored was because I had worked with someone or was on a board or committee with someone somewhere else and they thought of me,
Hmm.
which was so meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And I do the same. I think of other people and I try very hard not to burn bridges. They say, don't burn any bridges when you leave. And that has really worked out for me to my benefit
Hmm.
because like I said, every single new opportunity I've had, even the ones I haven't explored or taken them up on the offer, it was all because of a previous relationship that I formed. And I just think it's so important to keep those relationships, but also like don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to try something new.
Yeah.
And like this, like I under normal circumstances would have never ever explored this opportunity on my own. But David Rothstein really pushed me and he said, you can do it. You're going to be amazing. Go for it.
Saying yes to things like serving on boards, being on committees, those are important, I think, for people, and not just in a way that is in a weird, icky, like networking. I hate the word networking. I just hate it. I love connections and relationships. I really like that language better. And when I talk with folks about it, that's the way I try to say it. It's important to say yes to things, right?
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to say yes. And sometimes we get so bogged down in our day-to-day lives. We have kids, we have practices, we got to run people around. And we're like, I don't have time to add another thing to my plate. And it's a balance. I'm not saying say yes to everything, but say yes to the right things. Say yes to the things that mean something to you. So for a board, I'm not going to join a board unless their mission is something I truly believe in and something I can get behind and something I want to dedicate my free time to because you're not getting paid, So if I'm going to be on a board and I'm going to be in meetings 2 hours, even if it's just once a month, I'm away from my family. So it better involve kids. It better involve making something better for the world or I'm not going to do it.
I think, as I would say, or they taught us in seminary, that'll preach, right? Like that's a real good way to look at your time. At what point in your career did you start to feel like you belonged? You belonged in the room where it happened, if you will. Like when did that kind of hit you where you're like, oh yeah.
I will be honest. I sometimes still don't feel like I belong in the room.
Sure. Imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I think everyone has imposter syndrome at some point in their career. I do feel like when I was at Case and it was before I went over to Weatherhead when I was at the central marketing office and I was proposing these ideas and people were saying, oh, that's great. Let's implement them. And I got the VP behind me and the president behind me like that. Then I was like, oh, maybe I really know what I'm talking about because people are actually listening to me for once.
Yep.
So I think case for me was that point where I built up a little more confidence,
Mm,
and I will be in the room whether I'm wanted or not,
mm,
and I will speak up even if people don't want to hear it.
mm.
But I'm not at this point, I'm not going to back down if I feel passionately about something or if I have an idea. I'm not one to be quiet about it anymore.
Where do you think that came from? Is that just part of who you are?
I am a little outgoing, if you will,
Yeah.
but I was pretty timid in boardroom settings. And there are times, when it's all white men in the room
Yeah.
and me.
Right.
And I try to use some jokes to break up the
Yeah.
staleness of the room. But I think at this point, I have too much to lose by not saying anything.
Hmm.
And I don't want to be the timid flower in the room or the woman or the Black woman who's
Right.
well spoken
Uh-huh.
in the room. I just, I don't have anything to lose as long as it's appropriate what I'm saying. Like,
It's interesting. You almost read my next question. Like my
oh,
next
really?
question says, as a Black woman in communications and public leadership, I'd imagine there are rooms where you were not only the one of the more qualified people, but also the most scrutinized, right? And so like that was my next question. And what has that been like? And what I mean, maybe for people out there, what is that like? Because I think as growing up as a white male, like I have no idea.
It it's hard. You feel like you have to prove yourself twice as much as everyone else. So I've had the uncomfortable question of where were you educated?
Oh wow.
And it took everything in me to not punch the person right in their
Right,
stupid
right. Yeah.
face,
Yeah.
but answer with like grace and poise and walk them through my career. And yes, I have a master's degree and I have a lot of work experience and I raised a family and I have 5 children and walk them through that. But I have been very intimidated in these rooms
Mm.
in the past. And I I try to just pump myself up or talk to my mentor ahead of time and just be like, I'm going into this male, pale, and stale room again.
I've never heard that, and I love it. That's great.
Yeah, that was case. Everything was male, pale, and stale. And I know they're all going to be looking at me
Yeah.
and they're all going to want to see how she reacts to this.
Mm.
So I feel like I've been in situations too where they do push the buttons a little bit. They want to see if I
Yeah.
can hold my composure
Mm.
when they talk about those people
Yeah.
or the poor people. I've had situations where people were like, "Oh, well, you probably know poor people."
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
Uh,
"Hey, like awkward."
you know, you mentioned a couple things there that I want to touch on. You have a mentor. You've had a mentor in your life. How did that come about? What I don't think I ever had any direct mentors where it was an official like, "Hey, would you be my mentor?" or those kinds of things. Well, how did that develop for you?
This is actually somebody who I worked with over 20 years ago. And she was in a high role. She was in a role that I aspired to be in one day. And it wasn't like a will you be my mentor kind of situation. We just kept in
Mm.
contact after she left. And I can call her at any point and run something by her. But she calls me now too.
Mm.
And she says, like, what do you think about this? Do you think I should do this? And I'm advising her, which is a nice switch of roles at this point, but we've developed a really good friendship over the last 20 years.
What is the value in having a mentor-mentee relationship? And even the way it's shifted, but what has that brought to you in your career?
It's brought me out of my comfort zone in certain situations. She pushed me to go for things that I wasn't sure I was ready for. It has just sometimes it's validating
Yeah.
because in roles that like marketing and communications early in my career, if you don't have like a large team, it can be really isolating. And just to have someone who you can run your thoughts and ideas by and have them say, that's actually a really good idea. You should push through that. You should do that. You should propose it. So that's been really helpful. And it's not for me, like for any selfish reasons. Like I'm not using a mentor to get the next job or to help me with my resume or things like that. It's like just real world experience. So I'm not isolated. And so I still feel like I know what I'm doing because sometimes you don't get that validation at your job.
Yeah.
Even if you are doing a good job,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank yous are hard to come by,
Sure.
or good jobs are hard to come by.
Yep.
And I don't need that. I'm not that soft, but occasionally it's nice for someone to appreciate all the hard work you're putting in.
Yeah. And were there any people in your life growing up, particular of color, that you looked to as models?
So that is an interesting question because my family was very divided
Hmm.
growing up. So my dad was Black. He has since passed away. My mom is white.
Mm-hmm.
His family was in Baltimore, so we didn't see them very often.
Okay.
And I was around my mom's family mostly.
Hmm.
I grew up in Cleveland Heights, which was very diverse, but the schools I went to growing up at elementary school were not.
Right.
So we were usually the Black people. And it wasn't until high school where I got out of the private school and went to the public school where I had more diversity, got exposed to different cultures and religions and things like that, where I actually met more people of color that were older than me, that were people who I aspired to be. And I followed their careers and saw where they went. And then I ended up at a very white college. So that's a whole different story. But there are a few people who I have met along the way that have inspired me and who I've gotten to know and have shared their experience with me as well. But it wasn't until after college for me that I really had those meaningful connections.
That's interesting. Do you feel any more burden or responsibility to be one of those people now as the adult and as I mean, is that something that you feel?
I kind of do.
Hmm.
So I try to be that for I have a younger African American woman on my team. I try to be that for her. I also try to connect her to other people and various groups around the city that she can benefit from or make connections with. I feel a responsibility partially because it was like a part of my life I didn't have until I was much older. And I just want her and everyone else to know that they're not alone and there are people who are willing to help them along their career, whether it's just giving some advice or helping connect them to other people who might be able to
That's
give them
fantastic.
good advice.
Yeah. What a fabulous and heavy burden. What do people maybe misunderstand about your role now as the chief communications officer? What do they like, especially in city government? What do you think people maybe misunderstand?
I think people don't see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that we're doing. They just see what happens on the news.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell the mayor and the cabinet, I'm prouder of what doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
Because that is stuff that not that I'm covering things up, but there are some stories that are just silly.
Right.
And I will work with the reporter and I'm like, don't do that. This is a silly story. How about I give you this and I'll give you the exclusive on this?
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that I do that people don't understand is stuff they don't see.
Interesting. What do you think it takes to try to get, I mean, you're in a comms role that is, like you said, in some ways, you're never going to make everybody happy all the time, right? You've had to communicate through some really hard things, some crises, and that's just part of the nature of being in communications.
Sure.
What do you think pressure reveals about people or about being a communicator? How, like, what are the challenges there?
The biggest challenge for me is in the midst of a crisis when everyone is running around, like I have to be the calm one
Hmm.
because I learned early on, like people are looking at me, and if I'm not calm, it's going to freak everyone out. So we had a cyber attack a couple years
Yeah.
ago,
Yep.
and everyone was freaking out. And I go to making jokes, you know what I mean? Like, we had the FBI and the Cyber Reserve, all these people at our emergency operations center, and they were this wasn't a great joke, but they were wearing red polos.
Yeah.
And so I walk in, I'm like, "Oh, who called the geek squad?" And, the FBI didn't like it, but our staff, like, it made them, like, laugh and say, like, "Okay, we take this seriously, but you can, like,
Yeah.
add a little levity to it." So, I just try to, even if I'm freaking out on the inside, make sure my outside is calm and reassure people we have a plan. This is what we're going to do. I've got you.
Yeah.
Let's move forward. It's gonna be okay.
I worked in operations, and I actually really enjoy crises because as somebody who kind of struggles with the ADHD brain, for me, when crisis happens, I'm at my best, and I am like, okay, everybody, I can just see the world spinning quickly, but I slow down. So
Yeah.
those
And that's
crises,
a skill. That's a good skill to have.
yeah,
Telling you.
that's one of my superpowers, or maybe my only one. What right now, what gives your work the most meaning? Because you're in a role that is public facing in a way. I mean, it's sort of both, right? You have the, like you said, the behind the scenes and the public part of it. But what gives your work the most meaning right now? You mentioned how much you believe in the mayor's vision, but underneath the titles and responsibilities, what is that?
For me, it's the resident impact. So all the stuff that we're working on, all the projects that we're launching, all of our strategic planning is for the residents of Cleveland. So when I can go out there and see kids excited because a new playground is being built, or see an older couple really happy because they got their home repaired, those kind of impact stories are what keep me going. And I think that's what keeps the mayor going too, when
Yeah.
he goes out and he sees the work happening and the impact being real for the residents.
That has to be important. I mean, because of all of the negativity that surrounds politics and government, you have to keep pumping up some of those positive stories, and not just for spin by any means, but actually to motivate internally, right? Like that's got to be part of it.
Yeah, and just to educate internally, because having 8,000 employees, not everyone pays attention to our SharePoint site where we put all our happy news,
Right.
and not everyone checks their emails. So how do we reach people where they're at and make sure that they know that we see them? We see the work that they're doing. Everything that every single person in the city does is meaningful and impactful, and we can't improve things for the residents without every single one of them.
That's a good word. What do you wish somebody had told you about leadership when you were younger going into these roles?
Oh, wow. I wish early on that I was told to assume positive intent. And I know
Hmm.
that might not be a popular concept, but at the end of the day, I think everyone has silent struggles that we don't know about. And it might seem that someone's attacking you. And young Sarah would be like, "Oh, let's go. I will attack you back." You know what I mean? And we'll duke it out and I will win because I'm stubborn. But I wish someone told me that you don't know what people are struggling with. So you should always assume positive intent. Let them prove you wrong, but don't go in with a negative thought because that will impact your whole conversation, your whole interaction. Go in positive, assume positive intent, And then it just will end up being a more positive interaction.
That's a very Ted Lasso sort of approach. And that leads me to my next question. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ted Lasso, but I always like to.
Oh, yeah. That's one of John's favorites.
Oh, yeah. Your husband, John's awesome. I haven't seen it in so long. So I always ask people this question. It's what brings out the Larry David part of you, the Curb Your Enthusiasm, the most frustrating part, right? You can answer that politically if you want.
Oh my gosh.
What brings out those Ted Lasso moments at work that are like, man, this brings me joy? I mean, I know you've mentioned a little bit of that, but like that balance that we all have. What is that like for your current role?
Sure. First of all, I love this question because I love Larry David as well. I think the thing that frustrates me the most, and probably a lot of marketing and communications people can relate to this, is when other people procrastinate and then they bring you something and you have to turn it around really quickly, either because they sat on it or they just had an idea and they're like, I want this in like 2 hours. That drives me insane. I've learned to control it a little bit. I wrote on my like whiteboard, I erased it before this. Your procrastination is not my emergency.
I love that phrase. Yes.
So I try to live by that, but it irks me every single time.
Okay. All right. I believe that. And I can get down with that. What about, the Ted Lasso moment? You've alluded to them, but maybe there was one that you're like, man, this was just such a positive interaction with the mayor or with yourself and another a community member or a staff member. What might stand out?
Well, here's one. In addition to like impact on residents, I like when my team succeeds. I gave an opportunity to someone to give a presentation to the cabinet and they crushed it. And it was like a proud mom moment for me. And it brought me so much joy to see them show what they can do to a powerful room of leaders, earn some respect from these leaders, and then it gave them confidence to do it again and explore new ideas and not hold back. So that has been a great Ted Lasso moment for me.
That's awesome.
But also in the community, sometimes it's just when the kids see the mayor.
Yeah.
So we took the mayor.
And by the way, this is not just Cleveland. This is even small towns. When we lived in Ashland, Ohio, man, every kid loved to see the mayor, Matt Miller. They loved seeing him. And it's just one of those things, right? It's the role.
They're so excited. Yeah. So we took the mayor to a restaurant that's run by students at a local high school. That's so cool. It's a culinary program. So and they run a restaurant. So we said, let's just go unannounced and have some lunch.
That's cool.
They were so excited that he was there. I mean, they were a little nervous. They're like, can I take your order? But just seeing how much joy that brought them. And they're like, hey, he actually cares about what we're doing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love that it was unannounced too. Like those are the that, the stuff that happens that people don't know about. I mean, there's a fine line, right? You want people to know because that's part of your job, but
sure.
All right. Word association. You ready?
Oh boy. Okay.
Success.
Happiness.
Failure. That's almost everybody's response, by the way. There's almost always
no impact. Failure to me is having no impact.
Money.
Necessary.
Yeah. I like that. You're not the first person to say that. And I think it's a great, you don't need to validate it, but I think that's a great answer. I think I've heard people say tool. It's a tool.
Yeah. It's not the end goal, but it's necessary to survive.
Nice to have, right?
Yeah.
Identity.
That's tough. Identity for me is still evolving. It's evolving. I associate evolving with identity.
I think that's fair too. It's such a, one of the reasons I started this podcast was so that we would talk a lot about people's jobs and career trajectories and all that stuff too. But, if our careers go away tomorrow, our job goes away tomorrow, we still have to have an identity, right? We still have to know who we are without a job.
Right.
If let's say the job goes away tomorrow for whatever reason, you're not able to do it, what happens to Sarah Johnson?
Well, I'm still a mom. I'm
Mhm.
still a wife. I'm still a friend.
Mm.
I would probably become a boot camp instructor because I love my little boot camp morning routine. And yeah, that's me.
All right, last question for you. Final wisdom for somebody out there, especially somebody maybe that looks like you, that is thinking about, or not, their calling and their career and their trajectory. What wisdom would you give them as somebody who's mid-career and has achieved some things and
Sure.
gotten to some pretty impressive roles and are now serving in a pretty fascinating role with the mayor?
I would say trust your gut. I really believe that you are guided to make the right decision. So trust your gut and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone because you don't know where it might lead. And I think we focus too much on what could happen instead of just focusing in the moment. Go out of your comfort zone. I certainly did.
I love it. Thank you, Sarah Johnson. Really appreciate your
Oh,
time.
thank
Thank you
you.
for all your work with the city of Cleveland as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Caller ID podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe with all of your friends on all of your social media platforms. Thanks again. Signing off, Brandon Davis Wells.